there are underlying principles that help you become better in any sport. And one of them is actually a level of curiosity that allows you to not just assume you already know something. That is number one.
You're listening to Drive Sport, the amateur track driver podcast. Here's your host, DMC.
Hello and welcome to Drive Sport. My name's Dave. For this show, I like to go by DMC. And my job is to help you get on track, have a great experience, get faster, and get your car home in one piece. The guest that I have today is truly stellar. He's somebody that I have been following now for a few years, and I really admire his coaching approach. Suellio Almeida, how you doing?
Thanks, Dave. I'm doing great. A lot of work. Every November, we launch something new in the academy, so we're all running around, house on fire, but it's all under control.
You accomplish so much as a creator of educational content, I'd say particularly for sim racing, but also for people in real life, right? You've got over 200 million views on social media, and you've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. And how many students do you have in your courses and academy right now?
Around 12,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. And by the way, I have been, I guess I still am, I'm one of those students. So I like you so much, I bought what you're selling. And we have not yet have the opportunity for you to coach me. We'll talk about that later. But I have worked with one of your recommended coaches in your academy, had a fantastic experience with him. I feel like at this moment, you are the most impactful teacher there is when it comes to driving technique. And I've interviewed Ross Bentley on this show, and Ross is fantastic. And I think in his generation, he was the most influential person. And when I first saw your videos, the thought came to mind, this is the new Ross Bentley. This is a guy that's speaking to a younger generation. Can you talk to me just a little bit about what got you into this and wanting to teach people about driving?
Well, first of all, it's a huge honor to be even mentioned in the same phrase as Ross Bentley. To be honest with you, there was no plan. There were no milestones. There was no objective. It was just me having fun in the sim and then having to make some extra money to pay for my piano career and doing coaching and then realizing I like coaching. And then that's how it started. You know, like how did I get to 3.5 thousand hours of one-to-one coaching sessions and 12,000 students? It was actually with kind of no intention in a way. It was just like me being there and enjoying the process of teaching people and realizing that the way I break things down to myself to improve and the way I brought that from music was very useful for racing. So since my very, very, very first coaching session, I realized it was very easy for me to explain things. I think there's some sort of like empathy for beginners where I know what they don't know. So I already assume their thought process, and then I have to kind of like build that from scratch rather than saying things that I assume they know, but then that might even get them more confused and stuff like that. So I think this whole method of learning for myself as well as teaching others was something that I accidentally found as a skill. And then I just tripled down on it. And like I said, over the years, the numbers started going up and I started creating content and the content went viral so fast. I wasn't aware of that impact until when it was already something that was actually changing my life. And it really comes from a place of passion. I always say you have to exercise love towards whatever you do. And I was doing that without the intention of, having any kind of like ego thing. Oh, I am a good coach. I am the best. I had never had any of that. It was just like, I want to coach people because it's fun, because I see people improving. I can look at your lap 4 corners and I can imagine your telemetry in my head and I know exactly what I need to work on. So for me, it's very easy. It comes with pretty much no effort. And I just, wanted to keep living my life focusing on that.
Yeah. And one thing that I appreciated when we were having a conversation before this a few days ago, that you were saying you enjoy coaching almost more than you do being on the track. You've made that leap from being a sim driver to driving, in competition on track. But you were saying you enjoyed the coaching more.
Yeah, and I see that as my end goal, I want to make this academy become the next Skip Barber. I always say, I wanted to become the next Ross Bentley, and I wanted my school to become the next Skip Barber. Those are, the references that I have built for myself now. And I mean, we're bigger and bigger. We have more and more students coming. So I really see that as my baby, you know. The academy is part of my life at this point. And I definitely will not stop it. Even if I get an offer to go to F1 or whatever, I will not stop working on my academy because that is my true passion.
I love it. I can see it. I think people who follow you can see it. And I think that's why people want to follow you, is because they can see the passion that you have and your ability to take something that's complex and make it simple. I want to dive into the specifics of this, but there's something that you said that I don't want to let go by. And maybe it's just because it's personal interest to me. You mentioned your career in piano. I used to play keys. I had a band. I'd write the songs. So music is really near and dear to my heart. And I heard an interview with you and they said, well, piano has nothing to do with driving. And I literally said out loud, that's not true. It has so much to do. And I just want you to talk briefly about that, about the relationship between playing an instrument versus driving a car.
So piano and music and any kind of instrument has as much to do to racing as it does with tennis or, you know, any other sport that requires a lot of precision. There are underlying principles to how you do an activity that are transferable throughout every sport and activity you can imagine.
Yeah, it's making a physical object an extension of you. That's how I view it.
Exactly.
Trying to create a harmony with something that is not you and make it a part of you.
And those principles, they help you prime yourself to learn and become the thing in a way that is way more effective, way more fun, and that actually gets you more results. So you have to obviously convert those principles in a way that you can teach specifically for racing. That's what I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years. Is like, how can I get all the experience practicing piano, practicing this, practicing that, and then convert that into telling you exactly how to learn trail braking. It is possible. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of hours. And I have been putting all those hours experimenting and trying, teaching them some things. Some things didn't work. Some things worked very well. So I doubled down on them. And now what I have in terms of my book, my racing technique book, in terms of my new courses, my very new course that I'm launching in a month that I'm recording right now, they are constantly improving every year based on that experience, based on that, you know, research. For example, one of the reasons I wrote my book is it's because I read the Ross Bentley series and I was like, this is great, but because now we have sim racing, we have so many more thousands of possible hours of practice. We got to a level of precision and description that can go a little bit further. And that's why I started writing the book. That's why I started creating new concepts, you know, like things like passive versus active countersteer. I never heard anyone talking about that.
Can you explain that a little bit more, what that means?
So passive countersteer is when the steering feedback naturally wants to correct the car for you. And active countersteer is a human countersteer, is when you actively turn the steering because of something that's happening with the car. The car is oversteering a little bit. And then I was like, this is so useful creating that distinction because passive countersteer happens immediately. It's physics. There's no human reaction time involved. But active countersteer is always going to be 200 milliseconds too late because you are a human. So this kind of distinction and concepts, I started creating all of them. You know, like I can even maybe arrogantly call them my inventions. One of them is like dynamic brake bias, how the effective brake bias combined with the engine braking affects the balance of the car. Or when you're talking about the maximum rotation point, the point where you combine a closing spiral towards an opening spiral, all those things I started like teaching in new ways so that I could break down your objective to go as fast as possible through a corner in the simplest way. So that's been my journey. It's really kind of inventing things and trying to find easier ways for people to really find the lap time without having to be a prodigy or to have some sort of like divine gift. No, like if we break it down properly, you can be very fast. And I've been making a lot of students who are 50, 55, 60 years old get to a level of pace they did not believe they could get there because they thought they were too old or they didn't have reaction times.
Yeah. And to that particular point, I have noticed, I'm 50 years old right now. I feel like my reflexes are faster than they've ever been. And I've had coaches comment on that, like, wow, you're really quick. Well, that's because I chose to be quick. I recognized that I was slow and not reacting fast enough. And many of those hours that I put into the sim are why that reaction time has improved so much. And let's use that as a bridge to a thought that I was having, which is you have made the transition from sim to real life racing. And I think that's a really hot topic now, particularly because of a movie like Gran Turismo, right? That brings attention to that and people imagine that. I see it as more fluid though, because a lot of my listeners already are on track, real life. But if they neglect the sim, they're missing out on so much opportunity to get better on it. So I see this relationship between sim and real life driving to be very, very fluid, where both are combining together. Could you talk about that a little bit and your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like, you don't have to choose one or the other. I think there's some sort of like unnecessary conflict or clash between the real life side and the sim racing side. No, just do both. You see the new generation of drivers right now in F3, F2, F4. These kids are doing both. And if you're not doing both, you are going to be behind. I guarantee that. And again, one thing helps the other. We already achieved that status in sim racing that, yes, it can make good drivers. We already have enough proof. We have many more and more and more. I'm going to say I was maybe one of the first 10 in the world that actually like made a lot of noise with that transition. But now it's almost like a common thing. It's becoming a common thing. And in the next 5-10 years, it's going to be a normal thing. It's going to be one of the traditional paths where you do karting and sim racing if you want to become a better driver. Now, if you're a real life driver who just wants to have fun, it really depends on how much competitive you want to be. If you want to be a little bit more competitive, it is going to help you. And if you're not, if you're negating it because you think it's not going to help you, I just believe you're wrong. And it's just a matter of really adapting to it. If you started in real life and then you move to sim racing, it always feels terrible because you have way less data to process. You have less G-forces. The car's not moving. You don't have the seat of pants. If you did the opposite, if you started in sim racing and then you go to real life, that transition is way easier because you go from a place where you have less data points to a place where you have an overwhelming amount of data and you feel everything. You feel a sim racer will feel a real car with way more precision than a real racer who has not done any sim racing because we have trained ourselves to work with less data. And then when we get to a place of more data, we can, oh my God, this is so easy. I can feel everything.
Yeah. Here in Utah, we have a long off season because of the winter. And I really started attacking it last year with your help, with Connor's help, and some other sources as well, and just got on the sims a ton. And when I came back and went on the real track, my times were significantly improved, much more than I thought they would have been. And it was because I was learning from the very specific concrete data. Just something as simple like having the graph that shows my brake application and my trail. And I noticed from getting that data that it was firm brake and off a lot quicker than I thought. I thought I was trailing. And then I'd look at people like you who were doing it right. I'm like, oh man, they are really trailing. That needs to stretch out much longer. I think it's so powerful to include that as part of the regimen.
100%. Again, I told you earlier that there are underlying principles that help you become better in any sport. And one of them is actually a level of curiosity that allows you to not just assume you already know something. That is number one. I'm going to use your example. You probably thought, I'm already trail braking. I'm trailing. When you say I'm trailing, you're putting a stop right there. So now no coach is going to be able to tell you, oh, no, you were not, because now there's going to be that clash. You have to allow yourself to ask yourself, am I really trailing? What is, like, how much is a lot? Like, how much is truly trailing? When I started, like, learning trail braking, I thought I was trailing. And then I look at my telemetry, I'm dropping from 40 to 0. Then I look at the telemetry of some of the expert guys and they were like 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, 4, 4, 3. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have the precision to that on my left foot. So I had to spend like another 2-3 weeks literally training my left foot to do what feels like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5% because that was so much deeper than what I thought was already trail breaking.
How did you train your left foot? What specifically did you do?
I just look at the graph. I think ultimately is getting a physical sensation of what you're doing and looking at the immediate feedback, which is the meter, right? So if you actually look at the meter and just do 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, and then trail down 9, 8, 7. I'm literally creating a new little exercise software inside my academy where you're going to be able to connect your brakes, and then you're going to have to follow an actual trace. We're going to train you how to do medium application speed, fast application speed, slow application speed. That depends on the suspension compression. Gets a little bit more complicated. And then the slow release, and then there's a 2-phase release, right? If you're driving a high downforce car, you have to do a small release on a straight line because you're losing downforce, so you can't just stay there, otherwise lock. And then you have to do a deeper, like quicker release as you start your turn in. So we're going to help you train all those things, and we're going to help you train what it feels to be 1%. Because you have to not only understand that you have to do 1%, you have to feel physically how 1% feels until it becomes a natural thing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're doing that. I've been to some really great schools. I've been to Porsche and Lexus and Lotus experiences, and they'll talk about a principle like that. And with my background as a professional business educator, when I hear them say, do this, my next question is, well, how do we practice it? And they just move right on. And it's like in the classroom, you could at least have people put their left foot down and then slowly raise it so that they get the feeling of what that's like. So I love that you're creating something with actual feedback with the real pedals so that people can see that, because that kind of rep makes a difference. It really will help people out tremendously.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word actual, because a lot of new students look at my curriculum and they say, oh, I already know all this. And I'm like, but do you actually know it? Are you actually doing it? You already know you have to do it, but you have failed to do it. I have the means. I can show you the means to actually do it. So you have to open your mind when you're getting to a coaching like program like this to revisit things that you think you know, but you're still not fully applying it like a pro.
Yeah, the most dangerous spot to be in is when you have a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned when I'm going on the track with an intermediate than I am with a novice. Because I can coach the novice from the beginning. I can help set up good habits. But when you've got an intermediate and that guy just hit that point where he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, right?
You know, there's a name for that, right?
Yeah, what is it?
The Mount of Stupid.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, the top of Mount Stupid.
It's from a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah.
Yes.
I literally teach the Dunning-Kruger effect on my level 1 on my new academy. Like I've always taught it, but now it's like, listen, you are somewhere in this graph. If you think you know everything and you have like less than a year experience, you're probably up here, Mount Stupid. And there's a downward slope right now until you realize, and that's the valley of despair, when you realize that you thought you know things, but you didn't. And then that is the humbling drop that actually makes you a better driver.
Yeah. And it probably needs to happen a few times. We get to that part and then we reach it and then we're like, okay, I'm climbing out of it. And then we get to the spot again where we're like, I know what I'm doing. And then you no, I really don't.
True.
Speaking of that kind of danger, there's a question that's philosophical when it comes to improving your driving, which is, how much do you encourage people to push the car in a sim to the point where they crash or they fail or they spin? What's your philosophy on that? Because it's very different, of course, in real life. You really don't want to get to that point when there's a barrier next to you.
That's a very good question, because this year specifically, I have finally built a proper framework that works for both. I had an internal conflict between teaching people how to overdrive so that they can feel the car, but they're still crashing, and then having to find a safe way to teach a real life driver how to find the limit without crashing. So in the end, what I noticed is that the things that I was teaching to the real life drivers for them to find speed more quickly and to find the limit safely in the safe spots of the corner actually also helped their sim racers. So now I'm rebuilding my whole academy with the knowledge that I got from coaching real life drivers. And I have actual like proof that I have saved already over $100,000 in prevented crash damage, just statistically from the students that I was coaching before and after. Like the amount of crashes that they had, the amount of incidents that they had, the amount of money that they spent before doing coaching with me. And then after that, like I was able to show them exactly where to force the car and where to not force the car, where to guess some stuff and where to never guess anything. But at the same time, I noticed that I was applying those things for myself when I was learning a new car track in the simulator. And not only I was crashing less in the sim, I was actually getting up to speed more quickly. So I started coaching sim racers this same framework.
Can you give me a hint of a couple of points of that framework?
Yeah, there's a 30-minute lesson on that on my new course that I'm launching. It's basically how to understand the limit, how to find it, and how to approach it by breaking it down. So you have deceleration limit, you have lateral limit. Deceleration limit is pretty much like wheel spin and brake lock or ABS, and cornering limit is pretty much understeer or oversteer. And what you need to do is you have to understand these in a separate way, and then you start combining them so that you can more easily predict what is going to happen with the car. So the first one is finding the deceleration limit. You have to know, first thing, before anything else, how much can this car stop? And that's what I do in real life. Before I get into a corner, I'm going to brake hard, especially if the car has ABS. I'm going to get to ABS. Oh, this is how it feels. This is how much it can decelerate, because I'm going to need that information to set my braking references later. I'm not going to be hesitant in braking a little bit too soft. And then the second thing is actually understeer. How can you induce understeer on purpose at the lowest speeds of the track? So you get a hairpin. Okay, let's try to understeer just so you can feel how the car behaves at the limit in the safest way possible.
And for the absolute novice, what is understeer?
It's basically when you're turning the steering and the car reaches a point where that rotation is limited by the front tires. So the car won't just snap and slide. It will actually get locked in a very predictable rotation. So I teach first peak deceleration, then understeer at low speeds, then understeer at medium speeds. And then we start to get a little bit of entry oversteer on low speeds, and then entry oversteer on medium speeds. And then for the high speeds, it really depends on the car. Some cars are by nature oversteer, so that depends. But that framework already puts you in a top 10% level of performance.
What is the first thing that you would recommend someone be aware of? Let's say that they've only been racing on the sim and they've been doing it for a while. And then they're like, I'm going to get out into the track in my sports car for the first time. What do they need to keep in mind when they do that?
I think that framework, the framework about how to find the limit, is number one thing. Your number one thing to do as a driver is to understand the grip limit of the contact patch as quickly as possible, because that's the tool you're going to work with forever. So this framework is very important for sim racers. I would say that most really good sim racers naturally develop a way to find that, although you have to just make sure that they are not the kind of sim racer who is like super over driver, because they might end up having some issues in real life. Because in real life, there's a lot of variance. The levels of grip that we can get in real life, they vary way more than the sim. So I would just be a little bit more cautious towards some of the sim racing drivers that tend to overdrive, and tell them, hey, like, follow this framework. Learn how to induce understeer, learn how to find the deceleration limit, and then start building up from there. Get the feeling, get the car to actually understeer at the minimum speed of a hairpin. That's the very, very easy way to get there. Nothing's going to happen. It's not dangerous to understeer on a hairpin, but it is dangerous if you're guessing, I'm pretty sure I can go super fast on my lap one, and then you brake a tiny bit too late, and now you're actually getting a lot of tire lock and spinning and crashing. So, like I said, I think this framework is really the sacred thing that I've been teaching. I actually created something that we call now the Almeida method. So the Almeida Racing Academy method, it's based on a phrase. If you can cause it, you can prevent it. So if you're afraid of spinning, then the first thing I'm going to do in a coaching session is, okay, show me. What are you afraid of? Can you spin the car for me? And then most of the time, they cannot spin the car in the same way they are afraid of. And when they try not to spin, they spin. When they try to spin, they don't. Why? Because they're not fully aware of the mechanism involved in making the car spin. When you're trying to trail brake into a corner normally and you end up spinning, you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm afraid of. And then I say, okay, try to replicate that. Then the second time they try to spin, but instead of doing exactly what they did before, they just like flick the steering and turn a lot and get into understeer and go off. And I'm like, oh, that's not a spin. So you were trying to spin. And it's like, yeah, that's weird. Now that I'm trying, I can't spin. I'm like, yeah, so let's work on that, right? So that's the biggest benefit of sim racing, because you can do some weird stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are certainly things that I can't say to a student and say, okay, let's do that again on a real track. But what I can do is say, talk to me about why that happened. Break down what occurred on that, because I think if you say if you cause it, you can prevent it. I would say that, like, on a real life situation, perhaps it's if you can diagnose it, you can prevent it, because you can explain at least what happened. Well, maybe we don't want to cause a spin unless we're on an empty parking lot or something.
I think that the biggest difficulty with this specific issue, when you spin, say when you're trail braking into a corner and you spin initial turn in, is that most of the time it happens because of your actual fear of spinning. So sometimes you get a little bit of oversteer. Your solution is actually to release the brakes, to shift some weight back to the rear and control the car. But because you get scared, you stay on the brakes. And that is precisely what makes the spin happen. So it's very difficult to say, okay, can you diagnose it? Because sometimes there's an emotional level underlying that really prevents them from actually going there and trying again. So the confidence aspect in real life is crazy. Like, it's very, very important. And that's why I go in the sim. That allows me to say, okay, let's try some weird stuff. Spin on purpose, spin on purpose, spin on purpose. Now they're like a kid saying, hey, Dad, like, see what I can do, you know? And that's precisely the approach that I want, is like, try some like exaggerated things so that you can really get the dynamics. And then when you bring it down to a level of actual driving, now you start to understand it better. One of the drivers that I was working on about this spinning thing was actually a real life AMSA driver. He was literally trying to spin, flicking the steering. I was like, would you actually try that in real life if you want to just spin on purpose? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, but that's precisely how you induce understeer. That's precisely how you do the opposite. Like, how do you want to spin the car? By abusing the front tires. You have to abuse the rear. How can you abuse the rear? By giving love to the front tires, by turning less. And then that's where he was like, oh, you know, like they already knew that, but like actually knowing, actual is the key.
And I want to move on from this, but I do want to highlight to everyone listening, these individuals working with Suellio and his coaches and going through these programs very often are very skilled and accomplished drivers, but they recognize that they need coaching. And I want to keep telling my audience, you always can benefit from this. No matter where you are in the journey, I guarantee you there's something you're missing. There's something that's holding you back from being safe or fast. So being a part of Suellio's Academy is a great way to do this. I want to go back to something that you said, which was people complain about the grip of tires, cold tires in the sim model. And this gets into which sim do you prefer, and which one do you think is giving the most accurate model to help people perform better in real life? And perhaps just what do you use to prepare yourself for real life?
My choice number one has always been iRacing. There's many reasons for it. One of it is, yes, I think the way the car behaves on cold tires and how the tires get up to temperature has become the most realistic of all the sims, but also the multiplayer matchmaking system is just phenomenal. And your ability to actually race with such nice latency with hundreds of people anytime you want, every 30 minutes you can join a full grid. And the level of drivers who are there, the constant updates, the rain, everything is really cutting edge pretty much. They are dictating the pace of sim racing technology at this point. So my number one, and my coach's number one, and my students' number one choice has always been iRacing since the beginning.
How do you feel about motion in a simulator? I've seen several schools of thought. I've seen some that say it's distracting, it gets in the way. What's the ideal way to add feedback for someone beyond just the wheel itself?
It's funny because I just had like a crazy discussion about that. I posted it on my YouTube. It's a 45-minute debate. And I think my current opinion is motion will help you become a better until you get to the top 0.3% in the world. From that point, you're going to break even. You're not going to get better or slower. And past that point, it will make you ever so slightly slower. It really does help you understand weight transfer, suspension states, and motion, like actual motion of the car when you have jerky inputs. It really helps you become a more smooth driver. It might make you more immersed and have more fun, be more focused, which will indirectly, semi-directly make you actually improve more because you're going to have more fun. And fun is number one catalyst for improvement. When you get to a level where you're like only 3/10 off Max Verstappen's lap time, you might actually prefer the precision that comes from having a static sim, because you're starting to use different cues. You don't need that motion anymore. You already know what's happening with the suspension of the car. You are not going to, with your human reaction, use that motion to find lap time, because you already learned everything that motion can help you. But until you get to that point, you need to get to top 0.3%. So that's my current opinion on it. It does help you get better. It does help you learn faster until you get to such a level of esports where some things will have to be ever so slightly different to real life so that you can find that pure crazy precision. But that is not necessarily going to make you a better driver in real life.
So, all right, then let me ask you your opinion about what I've got. My son and I had a project where we put together two sims side by side. So on these sims, what we got were four corners, what are called, the company was slip angle shakers. And I have found those to be highly effective, in particular because what I was working on is more awareness of my seat when the car became light. And I wanted to notice when that back end was kicking out, which is impossible to get through the wheel, at least in my opinion. So you can tune it to a certain frequency where it feels kind of like there's a groan or there's a drift in the back. And I found that to work well, just having the four shakers on the corners. I was just wondering what your thought is about that.
I'm going to start by disagreeing that you can't feel oversteer through the wheel. Actually, you can. And that's part of one of my lessons actually. So I can get super mad scientist technical, but essentially when you get a little bit of oversteer, the actual platform is connected to the rear tires, right? The rear tires don't steer. So if the rear tires are stepping out, the angle of the whole thing is increasing. But the front tires, they are part of the whole thing. So that means that when you step out, the front tires also get more angle of slip towards the track. And you can feel that from the force feedback. The force feedback can get a little bit stronger. If you relax your hands enough and you have a very, very clean signal in the force feedback, you can feel it getting a little bit heavier as soon as you step out.
So there is that level of detail that you can feel probably through a high quality force feedback wheel.
To be honest, I got to a point where I do feel every bit of oversteer through the steering and through the monitors. I will not feel that through the motion. I don't remember. And I drove at this point over 50 probably different simulators in motion. And I'm going to say that only 4 or 5 were actually good, because it's very, very difficult to get a proper software, a proper program, a proper code that really, really resonates with the objective, with the whole idea of motion. Most of them are too lazy, or they throw you to opposite sides and you feel a weird thing. So I don't remember feeling the car stepping out the rear through the motion, but mostly through the steering.
Have you ever done it though with the shakers on the corners?
Oh, I've tried everything. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say that the shakers kind of like confirm that the car is oversteering, but I already felt that a tenth of a second before with the steering.
Ah, okay. Well, and that's that kind of awareness and sensitivity that comes through having thousands of hours, tens of thousands probably for you, in the sim. And that's an awareness that you can cultivate that, again, is transferable to real life. I think that's probably the point that we're trying to make here is you want to drive on the track, also do the sim. It's going to help you be better, be safer, be faster.
100%.
And right here, we're going to take a break from my interview with Suellio. He has so much wisdom to offer that I decided to break this into 2 episodes. So you can download the second part now, and I'll see you there.
You've been listening to Drive Sports, the amateur track driver podcast, hosted by DMC and produced by Drive Sports LLC. Research and assistant production by Victoria Bidez. Music is by Illigot via Premium Beat Licensing. If you have a question, guest suggestion, or a track DMC should visit, please send it to show@drivesport.co. Please subscribe to Drive Sport on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. And follow us on social media at Drive Sport Co. We'll see you in the next episode.
Track days are fun, but also unpredictable. That's part of the thrill. When the unexpected and expensive lesson happens, you'll be glad your car is protected by Open Track Insurance, found at drivesport.co/insurance. Open Track offers full vehicle coverage and liability insurance, something you just don't find with most track day policies. And if you're a true track rat like me, they even offer annual coverage, so you're protected at every event throughout the year. It's a great deal. Get a quote today at drivesport.co/insurance. You can drive safer, be more confident, and have more fun knowing your car is protected by Open Track. Visit drivesport.co/insurance.